everyone, I'm Rita Peterson with Everything Homemade, and this video is going to be geared to child raising, and we're going to be answering one question in particular. And this question might seem very straightforward, but the answer is anything but. So the question that has been asked to me by a subscriber, she has a little 3-month-old and is having trouble making the baby sleep. So the question is, how do you make a baby sleep? Like I said, the question is very simple, but the answer is not. So let's start first by introducing myself. And so many of you know so much about me, but there are many new subscribers. And if you're not a subscriber, you're here watching me talk, and maybe you want to know a little bit about myself. So I am a mother of 6 children. Right now, as of 2020, they range from the ages of 23 months and all the way to 13 years old. So that alone makes it a very, very busy household. But on top of having 6 children, I also have to dedicate my part of my life to my husband. I also run a full-time cat boarding business. Let me tell you, it keeps me on my feet, my children's feet. We are very, very, very busy with it. So if you can imagine now, you have 6 children, you're adding in the kennel business, and you're working with clients every day, you're answering the phone, let alone doing everything else. Now, what does everything else entail? Well, I am also a full-time YouTuber. We have a hobby farm, so we raise all of our own vegetables, our own meat. So we do all of that on top of it. The other thing that, for me personally, I am a full-time author now too. So I write books, big chapter books. Right now I'm working on a series. And so that you're going, whoa, where do you have time for anything else? But there's still more. I also homeschool all my children. So there is a lot happening. When you understand my world a little bit, it helps you to understand what I'm about to tell you. So I live a very, very busy life. Now, all of it takes place at home. I'm very fortunate that the cat boarding business is in our house, and we see from anywhere from 8 to 38 cats. The other thing is, the YouTube can be filmed at home, so I'm at home again. Being an author, I can do that from home. So I am definitely a stay-at-home mom, but I have definitely tons of avenues that I have put my hands into. So the age-old question is, how do you make a baby sleep? Now, what I'm going to do to answer this question is I am going to basically go through my 6 children, because every child has a different personality, and every child, there's a whole new world you have to investigate with them because they react to things differently. So while one baby might react good this way, the other baby will say, forget it, I'm not sleeping. So you can't just cookie cutter children. And that's a key thing to most things in child raising. I may toilet train my child this way, and I made a video about it, and I'm teaching you the way that I do it. It may not work for you, but bits and pieces of it will, tweaked your own way. So while I agree with many mothers and many professionals out there, I don't agree with everything. And it doesn't work for me. You have to really sit back and really understand your child. And I find that when I sit back and really pay attention to the small things with every particular child, then I have more success in finding a sleep solution, or a toilet training solution, or an eating solution, or a behavioral solution. And once I find that, then I'm less stressed. Now, sleeping is tricky because, it's nighttime, you're tired as a mom, and your baby won't sleep, and you gotta wake up and do X things, and you're still fighting sleep, and you're basically living kind of a walking zombie, you feel like sometimes, and you just want to shut down, and all you want to do is curl up in the corner and sleep. I've been there, I've done that. There's many times where I have laid in bed and cried because my son or my daughters are not sleeping, right, as a baby. So I definitely know the feeling of when you're holding a little one and they just won't sleep. So that's a little bit about me, and this video is not to tell you exactly how to make a baby sleep. It's to give you pointers, and hopefully you can take something from this video and help with the situation that you're facing, because again, children are not cookie cutters. Not everything will work. 1 + 1 in this case will not equal 2 all the time, and that is just life. All my children are healthy children. They have no medical complications. They have no behavioral disorders or anything like that. So this is basically a base where I have no medical issues causing a sleep problem. So that's really important to point out here, because if your child has some kind of medical issue, it's probably going to affect the sleep. So you need to understand what that medical issue is and take some pointers, but also work around that particular issue or even a disorder, because what works for one won't work for the other. And I'm going to repeat that quite a bit because it's just absolutely true. So with Orion, he was born in the hospital and are very stressed circumstances. So a lot of times with birthing, it can also affect the way your child can sleep, especially in the beginning. So being a new mom, having Orion, the labor and delivery was absolutely dreadful, and I won't go heavily in that, but I did go into that much deeper in the labor and delivery video that I posted later, that I have posted. So everything was stressed. I mean, the hospital stay was stressed. I was stressed going home because as a new mom, I didn't know really how to hold the baby properly. Breastfeeding was all new. I had a lot of pain in my back. I was just plainly exhausted. So it was just one of those circumstances where I was trying to figure out everything. I didn't do a lot of babysitting before I had children. In fact, I didn't really take care of any young children. So this was like a whole new ball game for me. And I had to discover everything. So I made a lot of mistakes that I now look at are mistakes, but do I regret it? No, he turned out just fine. So with Orion, I used a soother with Orion, or a pacifier, to help him sleep. But what I did find was, like so many other parents, is they get addicted to that pacifier. So if it falls out of their mouth while they sleep, they start to cry. And I found that really, really frustrating. So at a year old, I did take the pacifier away, and it did not go over well, but within a few days he did learn to sleep by himself. Now, we had some really horrible sleeping with him because he was a bad teether. So there is one particular thing you need to look at. Some children, teething doesn't matter. It doesn't affect them that much, while other children, it is the end all. And Orion was the worst of the worst. I mean, of the worst. His cheeks were like huge and red. They looked like somebody hit him with a ball. They were so puffed up and red. He ran a fever all the time. He didn't eat solids very good. He screamed most of the time after 6 months to about a half a year, or 6 months to a year and a half. He was just plainly miserable. So that trickled down into a very tricky sleeping situation. So basically, I would breastfeed him, put him down, give him the soother. I found that he didn't like being on his belly or on his side. He really liked being on his back. And what he did in the crib was he would go onto his back and then he would have like this Superman pose while he was sleeping, and it was hilarious because he always had his hands out like this, like he was flying like Superman. And that's how he slept. The other thing that I did find out too is that he liked his head propped up a little bit. So what I did was take some receiving blankets and made little pillows out of them, just kind of folded them up. I think I did 2 or 3 of them. And so when he laid down, his head wasn't just like in the crib, kind of like laying like that. It was propped up a little bit. And he quite enjoyed that. But I didn't want I didn't want to stick a pillow, because a pillow or even a throw pillow is just a little too much. I just wanted a gentle slope, and that really helped him sleep. And so the one thing you can really consider is that I find, even through all 6 of my babies, is that they like their heads up a little bit, it seems. And for him, he really liked his back and his head propped up. So that's the way he liked it. He also hated being wrapped up tight. So there's no way you were going to take him and put his arms nice and tight and squish him up. No way. Not even when he was born. Don't you dare wrap him up in a receiving blanket or any blanket. He always liked just a loosely draped blanket. And when you're at the hospital, they always teach you to wrap them up. So I got home being a new mom, and I was constantly wrapping him up, and he was constantly screaming, and I didn't know why, until I'm like, well, maybe he just doesn't like it. And sure enough, when I stopped wrapping him up, he just wanted his arms free. He just wanted to lie there. And what I really discovered too is he was a really warm sleeper. So some babies, and I'll get to Nova, were really, really, like, Orion was like, he had like a heating pad basically underneath him, was what it was like. It was like he was like a little furnace. He was so warm. And so I just put him in like a onesie to bed, you know, with some blankets over, because he slept so warm. So that's one thing to note too, is sleeping. Some babies are warmer sleepers while others are cooler babies. And he was a really chunky baby, like, I mean, really chunky. And so he had a lot of baby fat to keep him warm. And so I didn't have to have big, heavy fleece sleepers and all that kind of stuff because he was so warm. So once I figured out his traits and what he liked, which then helped me put him down to sleep. Now there's times where I knew he needed to go to sleep, and I would put him down in a crib and let it cry it out for 10-15 minutes. But usually after that, he was sound asleep. So what I found out as a new mom at the time, if I really need him to go to sleep, get him into a schedule. Start scheduling it. Start saying, hey, we're kind of going to start going to bed at 9 o'clock. We're start going to schedule your feedings. We're going to start, so you know when sleep is, and do a bedtime ritual. So at that time, when I started realizing that I need to just figure this out on my own, is every time the last feeding of the day, so breastfeeding in this case, is I would turn down the lights. I would snuggle him the same way every single evening. I sometimes would sing a little song while I breastfed because he liked that. So I did a few things to kind of get his brain going, oh, it's bedtime, it's bedtime, it's bedtime, okay. And so I got him to sleep on that. And I did let him cry it out. Now, there is to the point where this will not work. But 10-15 minutes of kind of crying and this and that teaches the child to go to sleep. And it worked with Orion. And you'll notice that on my 6th child, this will not work, and I'll tell you why. But with him, it taught him really quickly when to sleep. So after all his teething was done and everything else, there was times, you know, where he's snuggling with mom. I don't do co-sleeping, but there is times where it is necessary, let's say a sickness or something like that, but I do not do that regularly. I'm always teaching the child to sleep independently on their own. So he did have a separate crib in my bedroom, and I did put him down in that crib so he could learn to sleep by himself. So that's what I learned with baby number 1. Now baby number 2 is Ocean. Now, total different child, let me tell you. She was a chunky child also. She was born at 9 pounds 4 ounces. And I had a nightmare of a time getting her to sleep. I remember when, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks after she was born, John's parents, so that's my husband, parents came up to see the new baby, and I was just having a nightmare putting her to bed. I would feed her, I would put her in a crib, she would cry. She would not go to sleep. Even after 10-15 minutes, she just cried and cried. I would grab her and she would still be crying. She wasn't hungry, she just wouldn't sleep. Plus, she wanted to be like a night owl. She had her nights and days messed up. So I was trying to get her on a schedule to go to sleep. So I'd say a feeding at 9 and then another feeding at 11:30 or 12, trying to get her to go to sleep, but I could not get her to go to sleep. I would put her on her side, I would put her on her back. I would do everything to try to get her to sleep. Now, I don't heavily promote putting babies on their bellies because there's some medical complications that could happen, such as suffocation. She was a very strong baby. I want to stress this out, okay? She could lift her head up. By the second day she was born, she was very strong. And John's mom said, have you ever tried putting her on her belly? And I was kind of really leery, and I'm like, no. But I mean, I was at that point, I was willing to try almost anything to get her to go to bed. And so I fed her, and I situated her where she was on her belly safely. There wasn't, her crib wasn't filled with blankets. There was no way for her to get her face pushed in and suffocate or anything like that. And she went to bed. Just off to sleep. And that was it. It was like I'd given her a sleeping drug. Like she just went to sleep. It was unbelievable. I was hugging my mother-in-law. I was so thrilled I actually slept. So with Ocean, it was just a change of sleeping position with her. Otherwise, I didn't really have a lot of trouble with her sleeping. She was a fantastic teether. I mean, she would cry once, and within a second, her tooth was in and she was running around. No word of a lie. She was just so simple as a teether. She didn't even teeth. She just, pop, there goes a tooth, and off she went. As of toilet training, she was super simple. She was talking in sentences by 16 months. She was just such an early developer. It was just incredible. So I didn't really have a tough time. Going from Orion to Ocean in that regard was wonderful. Once I found out how Ocean decided to sleep. So again, it came right down to personality of the baby. Okay, baby number 3 comes around. Nova. So Nova was a very, very small baby. Now, when I say small, she was 7 pounds 8 ounces, which you're like, well, that's not that small. Well, it is when it comes to my babies. And she was this little petite thing. I mean, I go from 2 chubby babies to this little tiny petite, and she was really long. And that child would be any mother's dream in behavior wise. Oh, I would feed her, I would burp her, she would have uptime, and she would coo, and then 30 minutes later she'd be sleeping for 3 hours. Then I'll wake her up, feed her, burp her, she would coo and play, be down for another 3 hours. And she was scheduled, like, it just bam, bam, bam. She just went into this schedule, and it was just simply amazing. And that goes to even to her personality today. She is so easygoing, so light-hearted, so beautiful in personality, that from the baby to now, it's just she's on her own field, but she's so patient, so relaxed. And I had the best night's sleeps with her ever. Like, it was just absolutely amazing. So she really takes the prize for the best sleeping baby around. She didn't teeth that bad. As for toilet training, she was hard because she held her bladder for like 3 hours. Once you figured out her timing, it was great. But overall, and even now, I mean, she's an awesome sleeper. So with her, she just was so relaxed that she just would sleep anywhere. I mean, she would be playing and then she would just fall asleep, and if I would leave her there in that position, she would fall asleep for 3 hours. And usually I would pick her up, put her into a safe zone, whether that be her crib, in a safe area in the living room, but she would never wake up. Like, when I moved her, she was just such a good baby. So I can't really give much pointers there because it didn't matter what position she was in, she just slept. And that was that. The only, I guess, thing I can say is she was a very cold baby. She needed lots and lots and lots of blankets. And I had to actually buy more fleece sleepers and heavier blankets to keep her warm because she was always a chilly girl. And even today, she's kind of one of my chilly girls, we call her, because she gets cold very easily. So we did have to do that. And once, you know, once your baby's warm, it's warm, but you don't want your baby over warm or overheating because then your baby doesn't sleep very well. Then we had Grace, and Grace kind of was a mixture of Nova and Ocean. So we did have I did have some challenges with her sleeping. She kind of liked being, she didn't like being on her back, but she didn't like being on her belly. She kind of liked being on her side. So when I would breastfeed her, I would put her in a crib on her side. So she kind of slept on her side with her arm, you know, over this shoulder, and kind of like slept like this. That's kind of how she slept. She was my side sleeper. And I would prop up one side, so I had a few receiving blankets. I would prop up her head a little bit on one side and kind of support her arms. So she had a particular way she liked to sleep, and I just helped her with that. Now, it was hard to get her in a schedule at first because she did a lot of crying. She was a little bit colicky too, so that can play in a major role. Is if their bellies are aching, then they don't feel like sleeping because they got all that gas buildup in there. So she was a little bit colicky, and she was also she started sucking her thumb. I think it was around 4 or 5 months old. And so she really liked to suck on her thumb a bit. But we curbed that later on. But she kind of would do, you know, like some really good nights, and then she would be up about every hour kind of crying. So there'll be a lot of times where I would feed her, kind of rock her to sleep. I should also mention too, with Ocean, I did a lot of singing with her. She loved Amazing Grace. I could sing any other song with Ocean, any other song, and she wouldn't like it. I sang, I think, Amazing Grace a few hundred times because she loved it. She loved Amazing Grace. I sang with Grace too because she really loved the sound of my voice. And I'm so happy they don't know that I can't sing. I'm tone deaf, so I have no idea tone. I can't hear it. But I'm their mom, so no judge. They don't judge. And so I would sing a lot to them. And that really helped. When they're breastfeeding, I find some babies just relax with music. So again, with all of them, I'm turning down the lights, I'm finding my comfy spot, I'm feeding them, then I'm putting them in the crib. And she did okay too with a little bit of crying it out. So I know she needs to go to sleep. She doesn't have a wet diaper. She doesn't have a poo diaper. She's not sweating. She's not too hot. She's just right. She's fed well. She's burped. You take all those factors out and you go, okay, you should be sleeping. Let's see, and within 10 to 15 minutes, of a little bit of crying and cooing, she would go to sleep. So you got to, I can't tell the baby, hey, you need to go to sleep. They don't understand that. But some babies are okay with crying it out because they get the point. Mom's putting you down. You need to go to sleep. And a lot of times they'll cry a little bit and then they'll just fall to sleep. And that worked also for Grace, and getting her into a schedule. Now, schedule. When the babies know when they're going to sleep, when they're going to eat, what's happening during the day, it is easier to train them. If they're all over the map, if you're all over the map, it becomes more difficult to train them when bedtime is. So even though I have a busy life, I'm very much a scheduler. At this point we have breakfast. At this point we do chores. At this point we have lunch. At this point we're feeding, we're doing homework, or we're doing whatever. At this time we're having supper. After supper we're doing this outside or these certain things, and then the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock is bedtime. And I am a definite planner and scheduler, and that way my kids, myself know what is about to happen. Now, it works good with babies too, because then their mental clock goes, okay, well, it's about bedtime, and they get the hint when you do it over and over and over again. Now, that doesn't mean that I've never had bad nights. Let me tell you, I've had hundreds of bad nights, where you put the baby down and the baby's not going to sleep. I'm holding, I'm cradling, I'm singing, I'm breastfeeding, I'm rocking, to the point where I think with Grace was one of the first time where I've rocked back and forth and held, where I fell asleep. I wake up 2 hours later with a baby in my arms and my head's down like this, and I wake up going, whoa, how long did I fall asleep for? And I look at the alarm clock and it's about 2 hours later, and I am so exhausted. And then, by that time, Grace needs another feeding. So there's been really bad nights with colds, your baby gets sick, doesn't sleep, but you got to kind of just address every single night and try to work with your baby's personality, their attitude, and what can work for them. So with Grace, like I said, it was a mixture between Ocean and Nova. She did some good sleeping, but then she had to get sung to and cradled to, and she liked a certain position, and we had to do a lot of burping and stuff like that because of her belly was a bit more colicky. So Grace. Okay, so Annika was number 5 child. Annika was a pretty good baby too. I would say kind of closer to Grace. But she had a thing of sucking her thumb and sucking her big toe. I know it sounds hilarious, but okay, so listen to this story. So I put her in a sleeper, and the sleepers with the feet on it, and she would throw a tantrum at night. And this started like a month old, like really young. And I'd be like, well, why doesn't she want these sleepers on? It's cold. It's like minus 30 degrees Celsius outside. The snow is blowing. We're in not the greatest heated house. And I'm trying to keep the baby warm, and she's throwing a fit. But I noticed that every single time I put a sleeper on, she doesn't want it. So I would put this like heavier onesie on with pants, and then she would go to sleep. I'm like, what is the difference between a sleeper and a onesie with pants? Well, the only thing different is the feet. So I got my husband to go to a thrift store and just pick up some sleepers without feet on them. And she was perfectly content after that. I was like, this is so weird, but whatever. Anyway, it didn't dawn on me till like 3 months after that she didn't like her feet covered because she would suck on her big toes. Here's a baby. She's sucking on her thumb, but if she couldn't get her thumb, she would take her big toe and suck on it. Anyway, we had to definitely curb that later on, before she turned 1, which we did. But anyway, it was just a hilarious thing. So she definitely was a thumb sucker, a toe sucker, that she wanted that comfort, so that helped her at night. And a lot of times I just let that happen, but there's a point before they're a year where I will curb it. Sometimes I can take the kids, like Grace. She wasn't a heavily thumb sucker, and what I would do is take socks and I would put them over her arms and then connect it to her sleeper, so it would cover, so she couldn't rip them off, and so she would just suck on her fist, and that kind of helped because the fabric doesn't feel so good in their mouth. So with not so bad a thumb suckers, it works, but with Annika, there's no way. She would suck on the fabric, and I think it was like 1.5 years, and we actually had to use that really disgusting nail polish that you buy for like nail biters. And we had to put that on her nails and on her toenails to stop her from constantly sucking. So that was a little bit of a challenge there. But at the end of the day, we made it through. She had some really bad weeks though as a baby, where she didn't want to sleep. She was kind of stubborn in that area. But again, we just stayed with the scheduling, stayed with, singing, stayed with everything being set up for nighttime, whatever nighttime ritual you want to do, whether that's a bath, lights out, a little bit of calm music and feeding, or calm, lights out, cradling, bedtime kind of thing. It's totally up to you what works. I mean, what works for me as bedtime ritual probably won't work for you, because all of our schedules are a little bit different. But whatever the case is, it's finding the same routine to do every single time, so your baby gets used to it. So that's kind of Annika. Now, Meadow. That is a whole nother story. So Meadow gets born, and she is thrown into this world that John and I have put our hearts and soul in for the last 5 years making. So with all the other kids, we didn't have kitties home away from home cat boarding. Meadow comes in, and there's a 5-year gap between our second youngest to our youngest. And she gets kind of born into this, hobby farm, cat business, author mom, full-time YouTuber. I've got older siblings that I teach. I'm teaching homeschool 5 grades. We make everything from scratch. We're just hugely busy. And then Meadow comes in, and it kind of threw me a little bit for a loop, because I'm thinking in my head, how am I supposed to schedule this baby in to give her the love and the attention she needs from mom with all of this happening? I spent so much time getting everything ready and working on the YouTube channel and pouring my heart out on paper as an author and building up a cat business with that. I don't want to just throw it all away. There's got to be a way to schedule in the time that she needs and the time that everything else needs. So basically, that's what I had to do. And to top that all off, she was the worst sleeper I have ever had. And I'm talking, I thought Orion was bad. I thought Ocean was bad. That doesn't even touch how bad of a sleeper Meadow was. And let me tell you, I lost it a few nights. I did. I for surely lost it with it. I mean, I lost it a little bit with the others here and there, but with Meadow, oh man, that was hard. So basically, to talk about her personality in a nutshell, she is a mom Klingon. All the time. And it just exhausted me. And what made it really hard was that she was a really slow breastfeeder, but she would breastfeed, and you know, there's a lot of babies that like to suckle as comfort, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But the second that I would, you know, burp her, move her, she would just cry. Now, with the other ones, you might say, well, just let her cry it out a little bit. Well, I tried that on multiple occasions. And there is a difference between a baby crying it out and a baby crying and going into panic mode. So what happened with Meadow is, what I found in the very first week is that she would panic. Like, she would have a panic attack. So she would be there and her face would be turning red. She would be heating up. She would be sweating. And the second I would place my hand upon her, her whole world calmed down. So crying it out wasn't going to work. I didn't want her to think that going into the crib was a negative thing, because that's what I would create. I would create fear, and I don't want to create fear in my baby. I want them to know that this is their safety zone. It's okay to be in your crib, and when you wake up, you can coo, and it's a safe place. But with her, it was like I left her. That was it. And she would panic. And my husband at one point said, "Oh, you're just overreacting." He said, "No, just leave her be." And so I walked out, and then he came up 5 minutes later, and I said, "See, we can't do this." And he's like, "Holy man, she is literally panicking." And I said, "Yes, I know that. That's what I've been saying. It's totally different." And so after that, I'm like, okay, I need to do something different with her, because this is not working. I don't know if it has anything to do with her birth. You know, as soon as she was born, her birth was completely natural. All the other births from Ocean all the way down to Annika were home births. So I wasn't at the hospital. With Meadow, I decided to do a hospital birth. I mean, I didn't get to the hospital until I was 7.5 centimeters dilated. So basically, I got to the hospital to give birth. That was a very painful 45-minute ride, by the way, to the hospital. But with how my life was with the farm there, my parents had to come here to watch the kids. I needed to exit from my life, and the only way to exit from my busy life was to give birth at the hospital, so I can concentrate that I was at the hospital. Cat clients wouldn't come. Everything my parents could take care of, and I just got to concentrate on giving birth to Meadow. And so that's what I did. She was also a huge baby. She was a 9 pounds 4 ounces again. But when she was born and her eyes just popped open. All the other babies, their eyes were kind of closed. You know, they look at you and they're snuggled, they're nice, and their eyes are squinty closed. But with her, she was born, and within the 5 minutes that she was born, then put on my chest, her eyes were wide open. It was like she said, "Hello, Mom, I'm here." And we have pictures of her with that, and my husband looked at her, her big blue eyes were wide open, and she didn't snooze right away like every other baby that I've had. She was just awake and awake, and she didn't take the regular, morning 2-hour nap, afternoon couple hour nap, maybe a half an hour to an hour in the evening. It was like, I am up, I am going to be up, and sleep just doesn't exist. So that's what I kind of had to deal with it. And so I was like, well, this is not good because I need a break. I got cat clients coming, I've got to milk the cow, I've got kids to take care of, and I got a baby who does not sleep. So I ended up doing a lot of holding at first, especially for the first 3 months. So a lot of holding on my part, a lot of holding on my kids' parts. Basically shuffle the baby, and if the baby fell asleep on one of us, you're now sleeping with the baby. Whether that be a chair. I mean, there's many times where I have held Meadow at the beginning, for the first 4 months, and I'm eating supper and she falls asleep on me, and I just left her because I knew the second that I would move her into the crib, it was done. There'll be no break. So either she gets a 25-minute snooze on me, or there is no snooze whatsoever. So that was really, really hard. But I figured that there's no point in her panicking and not going to sleep anyway, or just sleep on one of us during the day for a bit. And she was not even a long sleeper there. I mean, we did no more than 30 minutes. So basically, if I was there, I would kind of basically be walking with this sleeping baby, or one of my kids would grab a book and read while she had this little, more like a cat nap, and then she would be up again. Nighttime. Nighttime. Boy, that's the time when I really need my sleep. And wow, it was challenging. So I have never watched so many episodes of Forged in Fire in my life. That was a time when I watched Forged in Fire back to back with my husband over and over again. Thank goodness, I think there's 10 seasons of it. And basically I would feed her downstairs for an episode, take her upstairs, try to put her down. Usually didn't work because she kind of fell asleep on me, so kind of wake her up, then feed her the other side, and then try to put her down. Now I was lucky if I got like an hour because she was so exhausted. And then I would basically get myself ready for bed. She would wake up and I would feed her laying down. Now usually when I feed in bed, I'm feeding, in this position, but with her, I was so tired and she didn't mind this position, but she really loved sleeping or breastfeeding lying on my bed. So I would lay her down with her blankets, and I would lay on the side and breastfeed her on the side while she was laying down. And what I found out was that she would feed and then just kind of rub her back while she was lying down to try to, work out. She wasn't a very gassy girl, thank goodness. So she didn't have a lot of gas to burp out after her feedings. And so I would rub her back and then she would just fall asleep. And what I found out was that if I would do that, she would fall asleep. I could get a little bit of sleeping beside her. I would naturally wake up like an hour after, and I would take my 2 hands and go underneath her and scoop her. Don't move her. Like, I did not move her. Scoop her up, and literally I'm kind of like this cartoon, tiptoeing my way to the crib and gently placing her down into sleep, and cross my fingers that I would have 2 hours and she would sleep in her bed. And that usually would work. So, I mean, I didn't go to sleep then until midnight, but at least she was sleeping and fed. And so I would do that. Now around 4 o'clock in the morning, she'd always wake up and I would feed her whichever side. Again, I would be lying down. I did very little cradling while I was feeding her in bed because she didn't like it. And I would feed her the other side or both sides or whatever. And I would just leave her. And I would get up at, being an hour after I would feed her, whatever, and go milk the cow, feed the cows, feed the goats, get the chickens ready, get my husband's breakfast ready, and leaving her in bed. Now, this is when she's not rolling, so she can't get out of bed, and the position and where she was 100% safe. So safety always. But I would just leave her, and my husband knew she was there, and so that's how we worked with the sleeping. So it's kind of co-sleeping and kind of not, because a lot of times I kept on promoting her to go into her crib, and that's what I wanted to do was, if she slept at least for a couple hours in her crib per day, I'm going in the right direction. So I kind of basically then said, you know what, then I'm going to feed you in bed, because that's how you can sleep. And around 4 months old, she finally started taking some afternoon sleeps. By 4 months, I know. But what was tricky is that around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I would come upstairs and I would tell my kids, do something, start on something. Mom's going to be another hour because I got to go feed Meadow. And I would lay down in my bed, again, lay with her, feed her on her side, because that's how she liked. She liked laying down, but she wasn't feeding her, like would feed on her side against me. And she loved her little hands being held. Like, you would have to hold her. She really liked touch. She needed that confirmation that mommy was there. And so I would feed her, and then I would stay with her sleeping for a little while, stroking her head, stroking, rubbing her little hands. Mommy loves you. Really, basically a forced time for me just to slow down, just to stop. It was all about little Meadow and giving her what she needed, and which is mom. She needs mom, and I can understand that, but she's such a needy child, but I needed to give her that to fill up her little love tank. And so that's what I did with her, and I did that until she was about 10, 11 months old. And then when she went to sleep, of course, I had a baby monitor up where she was sleeping, and it's a free cat zone. So upstairs where she was feeding, it was no cat. So there's no way that they could sit on her head or anything like that. I want to stress that, because downstairs or the main floor is all the cats were with us. We do not want a baby sleeping, because there is a chance that a cat can crawl up on their head and suffocate them. So this is a free cat zone. And so she would fall asleep then. At least I got an hour, 1 hour, okay, with her after I fed. So then at night I would do the exact same thing. But every single night I would pick her up and put her in her crib to make sure she slept for a couple hours. So then she turned, it was 14 months when I was done breastfeeding her. And then we had to switch things up because she was growing out of her playpen. And we moved her into a room with 3 of her other sisters. So now there's 4 girls in the room. And we only have 3 rooms in the house. So I have Ocean sleeping in one room, Orion having his own room, and the other 4 girls in the other one. So she's in a full-size bed. She's in a bunk bed with a safety bar. And the transition, like all the other ones transition so quickly. I usually transition my babies at 1 year into a big bed, and then they just sleep there till they grow up, right? But with her, again, that transition of mom, I need you. And so I would put her down to sleep. And again, if I would leave, she just would panic. Like I said, there's a difference between a child just crying and a child going into complete panic mode. The cries are different. They totally act different. There's a difference between the two. And so I ended up, I would get all the kids into bed, and then I would put her in the bed. The other kids were really good, just go to sleep. And I had my own little blanket that I had so I could kneel down beside her bed, and I would hold her hand. And I would rub her hand or rub her head just until she fell asleep. And sometimes I was 10 minutes, sometimes I was 40 minutes, sometimes it was an hour. that I was in there, and I did that till she was, I think it was 18 months old. And then when she was 18 months old, what I found was she was getting comfortable in her bed. She was getting comfortable with the routine. She knew that mom was in the house. And so at that point, she wasn't teething anymore. I should also say she was also a bad teether. So that probably might have played a little bit into that, where, you know, on top of being a mom, needing mom, she was also a horrible teether, which makes it even more of a Klingon. So at 18 months, there was no more teething, and you always want to do a change in their routine when the child is at the best of health, and there's no teething, no sickness, no other influences to make the child react negative to the situation. So I made a decision, go, no, you really need to learn, when I put you to bed like all the other kids, it's bedtime. It's okay. Mommy can be gone and you're okay. So it took about 4 days of some crying, but it was different crying. It was just crying, you know, oh, mommy's gone. But then that crying turned into cooing or babbling. And when that crying turns into babbling, that's a little bit different. So babble, cry, it's not a panic. And she went to bed. And then she went to bed. And now at 23 months old, you know, we're closing into 2 years old, she now climbs freely into her own bed. And she pulls the blankets up. And she goes, Mom, Mom. And she makes her little fishy lips. She goes, and she gives me a kiss in the air, and I give her a big kiss back. And she is so happy that you would never realize the hard time I had putting her to sleep. But I think a lot of the success that I have now with her is because I kept on being persistent. I kept on going, okay, you can sleep by yourself. Okay, you can sleep. You have, I'm giving you myself, my touch, my time, but I'm also trying to teach you independence where you're not totally relying on me to go to sleep. So as a young age, I gave her that comfort she needed, and she knew throughout the different stages mom was there, but at the same time, I'm slowly weaning her off of needing that touch to go to sleep, where she understands that I can give you a hug and a kiss, and you can go into your bed and wrap the blankets up and be comfortable in your own bed. And that is key, because I need my own bed without, you know, to sleep. But the first, you know, she needed mom, and that's what she needed. So I hope this is helpful in some way, in some fashion, that it helps you with the sleeping of your baby. The biggest thing that you can take away is just learning what makes your baby tick. Remember to follow a schedule. Remember to do the same nighttime routine. Remember to take the time to shower them with love. No matter how tired you are, make sure that they're not, you know, overpeed, they're not sweating, they're not too cold. Maybe they like their head propped up a bit. Maybe they don't like to be so tight. Maybe they like to hang a little bit looser. You know, like I said, the question is easy. The answer is complicated. And as a mom, you know your baby the best, and you need to do what's best for them. And so some babies will be much harder than other babies, but find some kind of middle ground that you can get your baby to go to sleep. So shoot me some comments. I'm sure there's going to be comments. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.